Hey everybody, welcome back to the Pixelists, the podcast about all the nerdy things we love and enjoy. I'm Will, that's Blake, and today we're here to talk about some Critical Role, some apogee Solstice goodness.
Our bread and butter.
We got
Let's get
guest
back to it.
characters, bro. I'm excited to dive in.
Speak about bread and butter, dude. You ever had that homemade like sweet bread? You put a little butter on top, toss it in the microwave for about 30 seconds, let it kind of melt into it. The sweet bread like soaks it up, dude. Cup of coffee, good to go.
What kind of sweet bread we talking?
It's an orange sweet bread that we made. Yeah, dude. Homemade.
Bro, I didn't know you had that in your repertoire.
My wife made it. I did not.
That sounds good. It reminds me of old mill days and those.
Oh yeah, dude.
Those sweetbreads.
Yeah. And then you take the orange and you shave like the orange zest over the top, so it's nice and delicious.
Fancy.
Yeah, dude.
That sounds real good. I've got my coffee. Unfortunately, I don't have any delicious treats to go with it though.
That's okay.
Also random, but you know, sweetbread is like the name for like it's like a culinary name for like some stuff that's real gross. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Is this about to get weird? What are you talking about?
Let me look this up.
Dude, you are such a weird person.
I'm not, bro.
Favorite number.
Right.
You got all these weird things about you. It's like the more I do this show, the more I'm like, who is this person? I've known you my whole life. And I'm like, who is this guy?
I'm just more cultured, clearly. But sweetbread is a culinary name for the thymus or pancreas, typically from a calf or a lamb.
Oh, okay.
Learned that lesson the hard way one day. I was like, oh, sweetbreads, that sounds good.
What's the one, like, what is it? The bull testicles that people are like, oh, that sounds good. And you're like, wait, what is that?
Oh, yeah. Like Rocky Mountain oysters or something like that.
Yeah, right.
So, yeah, I don't know how thymus and pancreas got labeled sweetbreads, but yeah, be careful, those of you out there.
I wish you hadn't taken my morning ritual and just totally soiled it with your own connection.
Well, yeah, I mean, just to clarify, Blake was talking about literal bread, not having pancreas with his coffee and orange slices.
Yeah, that's what I had. It's delicious. So, all right, well, welcome you all to another fancy episode of the Pixelists podcast. And yeah, we're giving the Apogee Solstice continues with episode 52 of Campaign 3.
Yep.
I'm excited to talk about it. We got other announcements before we jump in?
The only one, then there might be another, but the only one I can remember is we are currently having our giveaway for 5,000 subscribers. There is a video on the channel called the giveaway video. I think it's our 100th episode as well. So if you haven't checked that out, do that. Make sure you leave a comment on that video. That'll be how that's how you enter to win a copy of Tal'Dorei Reborn. We will be choosing one of those random websites that selects a YouTube comment, and that's how we'll be picking. I think we said maybe at the end of this week, we will either end of this week, start of next week will be when we officially pull the trigger on that and choose our winner. So again, thank you guys for helping us get to 5,000 subs, and make sure you check out that video so that you have a chance to win.
Yeah, and also if you're here and you want more D&D content, you might check out Worlds Beyond Number. It's an audio narrative adventure available on Spotify and I'm sure multiple other platforms, but from the team, I don't know if it's fair to say the team over at Dimension 20, because obviously it is those people, but I don't know if they want to be referenced that way or not, or if they want to just, hey, we're the Worlds Beyond crew now.
Right.
But hosted by Brennan Lee Mulligan, Abria Iyengar, Erica Ishii, and Lou Wilson are the 4 people who are part of it. And it's a D&D adventure currently. So you can check that out. We covered episode 1. We're going to have episode 2 coming out shortly. So just another plug for more D&D stuff.
Yeah.
So.
And it's good. Blake and I are both really enjoying it so far. So if you need an audiobook, podcast, or whatever to accompany your drive or workout, whatever, definitely check it out.
When you said we're really enjoying it, I just envision you and I just like huddling it up and just like listening through it.
just, just sitting
And then
in
I
a room
envision us.
staring at each other while we're both
Then
listening at the
I
same time.
envision us like living together, like Bert and Ernie style. Like, all right, let's listen to it.
It's worlds beyond number time.
My wife's calling. Can you come home? All right. Well, you guys know whenever we talk about an episode, we like to do a little recap. So when we do a recap, we like to cut that out, post it as a separate video. And so if you're watching just the recap, you want to see our full discussion, you can check the description of this video. And with that, we'll do a quick just summation of what happened. So Will, I think you're taking the first half today.
Yes, sir. So again, this is episode 52 called Far from the Others. So where we left off last time was, this blinding light of kind of the climax of this apogee solstice moment with lewdness and basically our party being split up and teleported away across the world. So who we pick up with now is the group that consists of F.C.G, Imogen, Chetney, and Fern, who are in the Crystal Sands tundra. They basically immediately try to figure out what the heck just happened, what's going on. Chetney, using his, awesome wolf smell, says that, the rest of our friends aren't here. I can't smell them. We're alone. Imogen and F.C.G then both basically immediately attempt to send sending spells to their friends. And Matt has them roll D100s. And in both cases, the spells do not work. They just kind of fizzle out, and there's like this static that
Right.
Matt describes. And in Imogen's case, actually, she takes a little bit of damage. Chetney then recognizes that this is the Crystal Sand Tundras, and they are near Uthodurn, where he's from, and it's actually not too far away. And since it's so cold, like they need to start moving before that cold settles in. So Imogen tries to send one more sending spell to Laudna, and F.C.G says, well, maybe it's because, maybe the spell's not working because of where our friends are. So he tries to send one to Dorian, but once again, both spells fail. Excuse me. So as they're traveling, Chetney's leading them since he's familiar with here. But everyone has to make a Constitution saving throw to against this cold weather. And Fern actually fails and suffers a point of exhaustion.
Mm-hmm.
So as night begins to fall, they realize they need to find shelter. So Imogen casts Fly, and Fern uses her new wild shape ability to turn into a flying creature since they leveled up, and turns into a shoebill. And they, between the two of them, they're able to make everyone fly. And so they take to the skies and are looking for a place to sleep tonight. They eventually find this cave, and they're like, okay, let's land. And they're cautiously investigating it, making sure that this would be a safe place. They don't see anything, so Imogen casts Detect Thoughts to see if she can sense anything, and she doesn't at first, but then suddenly she gets a ping as this like lizard salamander bursts out of the ground, and we roll initiative. So as always, to try and go through combat a little bit quicker, I'm just going to hit the highlights. This lizard salamander creature is no joke, and like I mentioned, Fern has exhaustion, and the party is just wiped out to begin with. Like they haven't rested since before they infiltrated
Right.
the excavation site. And this lizard also has this devastating like ice breath attack
It's
that
like
does
40
a ton.
points or something. It's
It does a
crazy.
ton of damage. So they're going at it. Imogen casts Lightning Bolt. Chetney whips out, Esdros's Turmoil, casts Shatter through it. They're doing some damage, but they're also taking a lot. When suddenly they notice two other kind of shapes move from the mouth of the cave, and they hear a gunshot. And that's when
Yeah.
Matt asks Abria and Christian to join the
Oh my
table.
gosh. I love this moment.
And they roll initiative, and Christian Navarro is up first, and he describes his character as this emerald green, rose gold Aormaton that's
Yeah.
very elegant with a feminine face and wearing this long trench coat. There's no sleeve on the right side, however, because instead his arm is like transformed into a blunderbuss, and that was the
Yeah.
gunshot that they heard. They're much taller as an Aormaton than F.C.G, standing at like 6 feet tall, and they have legs. Next up, we have Abria Iyengar's character, who is this 3 foot tall, dark skinned gnome wearing like heavy golden armor with a massive symbol of the Dawn Father. the party quickly realizes at the very least these two are not in cahoots with the salamander because they're attacking it. So everyone basically, for now, turns their attention back towards the salamander. Combat continues. Abria's character is like, "What's going on here?" And she casts Mass Cure Wounds on everyone. Um, Combat continues, and eventually we get the "How do you want to do this?" from Fern using a Scorching Ray. So with the chaos kind of calming down, everyone's like kind of checking on each other, and then the introductions begin. The gnome introduces herself as Deanna, and then slaps Chetney, saying that he knows why.
Yeah.
And she then tells her Aormaton companion, like, "Yeah, just kill him."
Yeah.
And F.C.G's like, "Yeah, don't do that." And that's when Christian's character notices that F.C.G is also an Aormaton. And they ask, "Do you know D?" And the gun on their arm like shifts back into a normal hand. Introductions continue. They say that I'm Frida, and F.C.G's like, "I haven't met D, but I've talked to him through messages." And we then find out that Chet and Deanna were an old fling together a
Yeah.
couple hundred years ago. She says it's a long story, but they decide they need to all make their way to Uthodurn, and Bell's Hells kind of explain what they've been through, what happened,
Yeah.
like how they ended up here. And they actually ask, like, "Hey, are y'all's magics feeling off?" I think Imogen asks, and
Yeah.
Deanna's like,
Right.
"It does feel a bit weirder, like the Dawn Father is leaning away."
Yeah. Right.
Um, they do decide to find just a safe place in this cave to sleep for the night before continuing on, and they kind of get to know each other a bit more. With the party basically wanting to know what's going on with Deanna and Chetney.
Yeah.
Deanna admits that it was a fling, but it didn't end when she wanted it to, but they had some beautiful memories. Then she actually met her husband, had a family, and was killed,
Yeah.
but she
Jeez.
got better. She she traveled after her and Uthodurn, or her and Chetney broke up. She said she traveled to Uthodurn to see where he had come from. And there was this attack at the Midsummer Festival there, and she said this was in the mid 600s, so like 200ish years ago. And there was a big creature, and she was killed. Her husband became an adventurer and eventually found a cleric of the Dawnfather to resurrect her. She'd been dead for almost 200 years. She says that, she was beyond. She had traveled to the place after this,
Yeah.
and they're like, "Well, what was it like?" And she basically has this metaphor about, like, if you're a snowflake, like while you're living, dancing on the wind, death is like that snowflake landing on the ocean and kind of melting into it. Um, she says her family that she had, they're all grown up now with families of their own, and her husband named Dustle is old, and he moved on after bringing her back. He just wanted to keep his promise. And it was just only a few years ago that she met Frida, whom Frida just woke up near Uthodurn one day very confused. And Frida heard Deanna laughing and thinks that their job back in the Aor days must have been to like record and have recordings of people's laughter. So he heard Deanna's laughter, and his instinct was to like protect. Um, D did wake Frida up, but Frida never met D. And F.C.G shares his kind of similar awakening story and his history as a murder bot essentially. And Frida asks, "Did you choose your name? What does that stand for?" And F.C.G says, "No, my dancer gave me that name." And Frida says, "I didn't choose mine either." And they take off their like faceplate and reveals that Frida is also an acronym standing for Far Ranging Integrated Defense Aormaton. Um, Frida then tells F.C.G about this man, Jacoby Masel, an individual in Uthodurn who is the one that made their little blunderbuss arm. And it's like, you need to check them out. Frida then privately checks in with Deanna, who's kind of freaking out. She thinks all these people are cool and wants to impress them, but she's still pretty pissed at Chetney. Um, they ask, why the Dawn Father? Why does she serve them? And she's like, "Well, I was brought back like a cleric, like I said, and I just kind of felt a connection." And they kind of have this whole deeper conversation about the gods that we might touch on in our discussion.
Yeah.
Um, and Frida says that, I think the gods are kind of like Aormatons in that they have to be charged, and like
Right.
humans are what charge them. And Deanna's like, "This is all really heavy. Like, maybe we should just get some sleep for tonight." And so Frida's like, "Yeah, sorry, I'll take first patrol." And so Frida steps out to take first patrol, and everyone else begins to settle into bed. And as Imogen does, she notices her scars have like moved even further up her body, and they've even begun to turn red. And that's where we go to break for the first half.
With F.C.G asking, "Are they on your boobies?"
Yeah.
And Matt's like, "What is wrong with you guys?" And then begrudgingly he's like, "Yes, they
Yes.
are." No, yeah, I really appreciate you mentioning that conversation on the gods, because this is going to come up more than once in this episode. So morning's going to come. Deanna's going to cast Death's Ward on Chetney, which is basically if you were going to die, you instead pop up with 1 hit point. Cast that on Chetney, and as Frida awakes, is surprised. It feels different and realizes this is the first time that they've woken up to not having the Death's Ward, and very quickly realizes, okay, this is something happening. This is brewing between Deanna and Chetney, that Deanna's casted it on Chetney. We have F.C.G who bakes some mango flavored bundt cakes using that chef's feet.
Some sweetbreads.
Yeah, the sweetbreads. That's right. And I think had like a natural 20 on like the wisdom roll to make them like extra delicious. And they do have a conversation on, Frida talks about dreaming, and FCG is really surprised to find out that Frida can dream, and is really just enamored with being with another Eomorton. And there's even a moment when Frida actually admits, like, hey, it kind of feels like we're family, like we're connected in some way. We have another day's travel. Deanna and Chetney, as the days come sort of wrapping up, Deanna and Chetney have just more conversations about old times. And I will say, if you didn't watch this episode, it's really worth seeing this conversation, because Abria does a phenomenal job. It's a very touching conversation, where she sort of asks, like, what have you been doing? Like, where have you been? Like, what's been going on? And even admits that after the chaos of her dying and coming back, she came back to Uthodurn looking for him. Not really so much like in a romantic, let's get back together kind of way, but sort of just looking for stability, like looking for what made sense, and ended up finding home in Uthodurn. Chetney mentions that he left Uthodurn on bad terms, and gives a little bit more information from what we didn't know previously, from what we did know previously, mentioning that he had to leave Ultgar. There was another person that he stabbed in the kneecap, ouch, and was chased by the Glass Blades before escaping and living in the Savalier Woods for a brief period before moving on ultimately to Marquette. Deanna, and sort of talking to him as they're wrapping up the conversation, just gives him a big hug, and it's kind of like, this is really good. This is really nostalgic for me. And despite all the pain I've been through, like, you're the one thing from my past that doesn't hurt to like talk about. It's a very moving conversation. And Chetney, in the full feels of this moment, realizing that Katha is rising to its full moon the first time since the party's been together, feels this innate hunger bursting out of him, and he quickly has to, in sort of an awkward way, run out from the camp and leave. And everyone's kind of like, what was that all about? And people are like, hey, there's something you should know about Chetney. He's a little bit different. And Deanna's like, it's kind of a funny moment where Abria's like, oh, I know he's a werewolf. And they're like, you do? And she's like, no, I don't. I don't know that. But they let her know he's a werewolf now and all this stuff. And then they have another conversation on the gods. And there's another great conversation on, do we need the gods, or do the gods need us? And Frida mentions, like, as they talk about Predathos and the party lets them know, like, all the crazy things that are happening, Frida and Deanna are kind of like, maybe this is a good thing. And Frida mentions, imagine if you couldn't sleep for thousands of years, what would it be like to finally be able to rest? Deanna, who, interesting enough, being a cleric of the Dawnfather, is not so much as agnostic as Frida is, but absolutely is like, the Matron of Ravens sort of ferries us on, but separate from the Matron of Ravens, what comes after death will still be there, whether the gods are there or not. seemingly at peace with the idea of the gods. As Imogen points out, we're not talking about sleep. We're talking about like being absolutely destroyed. Just to cover that up. As they're having this conversation, they're hearing Chetney howling in the distance. They just continue conversation. It can't be bad. No big deal. And they decide, let's do, even though we can't reach the other group with sending, let's try a shared dream. So F.C.G, Fern, and Imogen decide to do a shared dream. And they are immediately pulled to seemingly the excavation site where there is this massive red storm, this locked in red beam that has reached up into the sky and is connected to Ruidus. And at Ruidus, they can see this sort of divine golden thread sort of tethering and pulling apart. And scary enough, down below, they see hundreds of people, not Paragon's Call, not the Ruby Vanguard, but red-skinned Raylora, who seem to have arrived on Marquette in some way.
Hold up.
This storm begins pulling them in. This beam begins pulling them in. Fern tries to escape. Natural One is immediately poofed out of the dream. Imogen's being grabbed into the beam, and Fern, back in the real world, basically slaps the crap out of Imogen and is like, wake up, and does wake her up. They have a conversation about it where Fern basically says, like, what was that like for you? And Imogen admits it felt right. It felt like home. And in fact, talks about when they were first teleported at the end of the Malleus key activating, it felt cozy. It felt like this is, I think the words that was used was, it felt fateful. It felt like the right thing that was supposed to happen, which we'll talk about more later on. All that to say, everyone goes to sleep. Frida takes watch again, and on Frida's watch, they run into Chetney, now hungering for blood, prowling in the forest, and they both roll for initiative. And it's Werewolf Chetney versus Frida. And Frida, realizing that Chetney is still down in there, begins playing the recording from Deanna earlier in the day, basically saying, like, you're the first thing that hasn't hurt to remember from my past, and is trying to like sort of snap Chetney out of it. Chetney, however, is basically for the next few rounds going to be ripping up Frida, grabbing him in his jaws, throwing him on the ground, slamming him against rocks. And despite all of this, Frida's going to continue to try to remind Chetney of who he is, playing these old sound bites. Frida will shoot off their blunderbuss into the sky to alert the party, like, hey, something crazy's happening. The party's going to rush over. And finally, at last, Chetney rolls high enough to sort of snap out of this and realize he's hurt their new friend. And out of sort of shame and embarrassment, rushes out into the woods. And the party, kind of thinking, okay, that was that was crazy, making sure Frida's okay. They turn in for the night, expecting to see Chetney again in the morning. And that is where episode 52 comes to a close.
One tiny last thing.
Did I miss something?
The kind of cliffhanger is that Frida was bit by Chetney, so they don't know if he might be turning into a werewolf.
I didn't even take it that way. I just took it as like, no, I assumed like it was almost like a tongue-in-cheek kind of thing. But that's a great point, though.
Well, we'll discuss that more here in a minute.
We'll talk about that. Yeah. All that to say, that's where the episode ends. And if you are checking out just our recap, click the link in our description so you can make sure you see our full discussion, because we're going to be talking about it right now. So, my friend, thoughts on the episode?
I loved it. Pretty much per usual. We were, we talked about what we thought this was going to look like with them being split up, and would we get
nailed it, by the way.
Guests. Yeah, I mean, I feel like a lot of people, I'm not saying this was a too good of a called shot, because I feel like a lot of people had these same theories. But yeah, that ended up being what happened, and always great to see a Bria. As we mentioned earlier in the episode, we're listening to Worlds Beyond Number, so getting a little double dose of Abria this week. And she's so fun as a player, which I don't want to launch too far into that yet, but love the episode. Love seeing Abria. Love seeing Christian. He's, I don't know if you're familiar with him at all, but
No.
he's an actor and he's like a huge Critical Role fan. They had him host a panel for them for like a couple years ago or something.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay.
um, anyway, so I follow him on Twitter. He was like geeking out, like he was like, this was a dream come true. So it's just really
Oh,
cool to
wow.
see
That's
him
great. He
get
was
this
awesome, by the
chance.
way.
Yeah, I thought Frida was incredible. Again,
Yeah.
we'll talk more about that, but yeah, I liked the episode. What about you?
All right. Sorry. I'm still stuck on that last detail. Was that what the con save was for Frida?
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I gotcha. All right, sorry. We'll talk about that. I loved it. It was great. I think we've talked about this a lot of times. Like, I always kind of parse my reaction between how did I feel about it as someone being entertained, as well as how did I enjoy it seeing D&D players, play a game together.
Yeah.
And I loved it on both accounts. I just love moments where like you could just tell the table's having a great time, and when Abria and Christian came out, like hugs all around, just excitement. I mean, so fun. I mean, you
Yeah.
could just tell the party was just so excited. And like I said, I think you nailed it in terms of what could possibly happen. Which, if you guys didn't see our last episode, Will talked about how maybe it might be the trial, similar to the trial of the take in campaign 1, where the party had a few episodes with one half of the party and then a few episodes with the other half of the party, which they're still not to Uthodurn. So it seems like we're going to get, at least a couple more episodes for them. Not necessarily in a row, but yeah, I like the episode a lot. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah. Yeah. Me too, which I guess I already said, so that's not necessary.
Nailed
But
it.
that's like that's a good point to jump in really quick, is because that's one of the discussions I've been seeing, and we've kind of had a little bit of it in our Discord as well. But what do we think that like next week's episode, tomorrow's episode, is it going to be this same group and we'll get another week of their adventures, or could we possibly switch off and get episode 1 of what's going on with the other half of the group? I've flipped back and forth on what I've thought was going to be the case here. I originally thought they would do, if assuming it happened at all, I originally thought it would be like 2 of one group, 2 of another group. But then I was like, you know what? Maybe they're going to just go, I don't know the right word, but switch off immediately, 1 to 1, 1 to 1. Because I was like, I wonder if there's at all going to be weird timeline stuff if they do too much with one group and then they have to shift to the other, where it's like, oh, the other group had a week, so now there's like that weird pacing of like,
Yeah.
how do I make sure this other group lines up with it? So
It'd be very confusing. Yeah.
Yeah.
To do like 4 days of the apogee solstice. Now we're back on day 1.
Yeah, exactly. But, and I don't want to get too lost on this because I do want to talk about it later, but Matt's genius and really interesting little salt he threw in this pot is the fact that like the sending spell doesn't work. I love that.
Yeah.
They like can't communicate with each other. That makes it a little more easy if he does have to do something like that, since there's, you don't have to like factor in, okay, they sent a sending message now. Anyway.
Well, it's also a very simple, like, why can't they just find a way to get back together, like ASAP kind of thing.
Yeah.
So
that's how I was feeling. But then somebody brought up a good point, and I actually haven't gone back to actually watch it, but apparently Matt says something to the effect of, we'll pick back up with this group next week. So if he does say that, then obviously it probably is these same people, which we again did leave off on this potential cliffhanger of a werewolf Aormaton, which I want to talk a little bit more about that too. But I'm getting long-winded. The point is, for my money, I'm guessing now we'll probably do 2, maybe 3 episodes with a group and then switch to the other. I'm trying to remember how they did it in Trial of the Take. I think it was 2-2, but I don't remember. So I know you don't really have a place of history to come from, but do you have any thoughts on?
I mean, I would have, before you said we'll pick up again next week, I would have thought they would have alternated for the reasons you gave earlier, but also since they were all together for their level 9, that video on level 9.
Right.
I kind of wondered. I mean, they weren't wearing the same clothes, but I kind of wondered if they were going to film one group, they were going to go home for the day, but Matt would stay. All right, the rest of you guys come in. Let's do the second half.
Yeah.
Which would be a lot for Matt. It'd be like an 8-hour recording sesh. But
Right.
yeah, so I would have expected them to flip over. It could be that I could also, in terms of pacing, I could see the Uthodurn group getting a little bit more attention for now, because I'm just thinking about, we had this peak moment with the Malleus key activating, all of this stuff coming to fruition, and then now we're sort of in that falling action, like leading up to the next whatever that thing is, whether that's 5 episodes from now or even could even be longer. All this to say, Orum's group is so much closer to
True.
the excavation site that I could see there being kind of a weird disconnect of, I don't know if pacing's the right word, but maybe like stakes. Like you have the Uthodurn crew, and then like now you have Orum, who they're there. Well, not there, but closer
At least closer,
Excuse
yeah.
me. Yeah. I mean, I'm still on team. If we're bringing in guest characters, like let's give us Dorian, please. But yeah, I guess if they are going to do more of Uthodurn, then we're going to have to wait a little bit longer then to find out what happens with that group.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting, and obviously I mean, nothing's set in stone. It could obviously be the next group tomorrow for all we know. But another interesting thing to think about is, one, they're pre-recorded, so it's much harder to parse exactly, what's going on with this type of thing. But also there's guests involved, so it stands to reason that there's probably guests involved with the other half of the group, especially since there's one less main cast member with the other half of the group. So it'd be cool if we even got like maybe 3 guests with
Yeah,
group 2.
you get Opal, Dorian,
and,
who's the girl who joined with
Fiora Rai.
No, not Fiora Rai. I forgot about Fiora Rai though. That's such a crime. Fiora Rai, Morgan,
or
yes.
Maury.
Yeah, right.
I can't
Which I don't
remember
know
her
if she
name.
continued with the group or not after the end of Kaimal. I really enjoyed her in that first episode though.
We
But
need to finish. Neither of us have finished Kaimal. If any of you guys have finished Kaimal, I mean, of course it's worth it. I don't know why I never have gone back, but I need to.
Of course it's worth it, but is it worth it, guys? I mean, that's kind of what we're thinking about. So anyway, but yeah, I mean, there's space at the table is all I was going to say. And I'm still on team, that group comes in, and then Matt, folds his papers, sets them down, and comes and sits down as Dariax, and Britton Lee Mulligan comes in, or Abria, or someone.
Yeah, I was going to say maybe Abria, since we know she's there and she was the EXU DM. I think that would be cool. I don't think it'll happen just because of the like immensity of what's happening in the overarching world. I mean, I'm sure Matt has been very gracious about giving this world to other people to pilot, but I wonder if he would do that in the middle of something this big. But I forgot to even get to the point I was going to get to. I'm wondering with scheduling, if that maybe lends itself to more of getting the same group in a row for a few chunks, because it'd be easier to schedule guests like, hey, come back this week and 3 weeks from now as well.
Yeah. Right.
It also kind of gives half the cast a little vacation, if they're like, all right, you don't have to film for 3 more weeks. Except Matt, I guess. Sucks for him. He's got to be there every time. Unless there's the guest DM situation, like you were saying, then that would.
True.
Well, no, because he and Marisha would be on separate groups then. I mean, I'm assuming they would want a vacation together,
He's like, I'm out.
Yeah. But yeah, so I don't know. It'll be interesting to see. But
do you see? I mean, this episode was slow in terms of like progression, in terms of like moving towards, like, the stakes still feel fairly high, and that it is currently the apogee solstice. We don't know how long this is going to last, but they didn't make it to Uthodurn. Seemingly they have another day's travel to get there. And there's a lot, I feel like, when it comes to like implications of Uthodurn, Chetney's whole backstory feels meaty enough to take more than an episode to address, which, maybe they address it a little bit and come back to it.
Yeah.
I'm curious, like your thoughts on like pacing and like how long. I know you threw out like maybe the 2 episode idea, but do you see this getting done up, tied up by this next Thursday's end?
In terms of just this group, you
Yeah,
mean? I don't know, man. Probably not, I guess. I mean, I think they can probably make it to Uthodurn pretty like I think when we pick up with this group, regardless of when that is, I bet like first thing that happens is all right, you travel for this next morning, there will be a D20 roll, I'm sure, and assuming that doesn't go haywire, they'll probably arrive. So I
yeah,
assume they're pretty much to Uthodurn. But yeah, then it's like, what happens? Obviously, there's Chetney stuff that they're not going to completely ignore. So I think that's touched on at the very least. But do they have the time and the space to actually do that stuff right now? I don't know. It feels like the main objective is going to be find somebody that can get us teleported.
yeah.
Um, which maybe Chetney has to like reluctantly approach his Ultgar and his old whatever the hell he was doing to like ask for a favor. I mean, it doesn't seem like that would be the case because it seems like it's on site with
Yeah.
that, but that could be the lead in to kind of tie them both together. But yeah, I don't know. There's a lot of interesting stuff in Uthodurn. We've got the F.C.G guy that Frida told F.C.G about that.
Jacoby, right?
That
Yeah.
seemingly, I mean, it seems like that has to happen to get F.C.G get some sort of upgrade.
I
So
want
there's like,
FG's face to get. That sounds much darker than I mean it, but I want his face taken off. Because I want to see if there's a name
yeah.
there.
Okay,
You
dude.
know?
I forgot that I wanted to bring this up, but so while I was watching, I had like and this is like a idiot savant type of moment. Like this probably isn't true, but I had one of those like moments where it all Charlie Day clicked together for me, and I was like, well, okay, Frida is an acronym, and we know that it was from back then, like you said, with the face
Yeah.
bucket, like that's their name. So it stands to reason that F.C.G might literally be a name from back then and not just like maybe Dancer called him fresh cut grass because Dancer saw F.C.G somewhere inside, right? So
Yeah.
I was like, what could it stand for? And what I came up with was first class greeter. Um, and I was like, because I could see Sam doing something like so stupid like that, where he's based on like a Walmart greeter. You know, like what I'm
Yeah.
talking about?
Yeah. Yeah.
And just because like he's always so happy and that could have been like his cover job for
Right.
then becoming the assassin bot or whatever, but what really tied it together to me was smiley day. Like he says smiley day to everybody, just like a greeter greets you when you come
Yeah.
in. um so that's my crackpot theory that FCG, and maybe not first class, but I feel like the G stands for greeter, and we might
I'm all about
get
it.
that reveal sometime. Anyways, yeah, mark it down.
Yeah.
It's probably wrong, but if it's right, we'll claim it.
Undercover door greeter turned assassin. I'm here for it.
Exactly.
We're gonna find out. I will say it wouldn't be nice for him not to have a name change in terms of just like, you know. Though with Dorian, with his name revealed, it was like you just keep calling me Dorian. That's fine.
Yeah. Well,
So
even if that was the case, I don't think FCG would change his name. Like, I don't think that like there would be an actual like new
yeah,
thing that people called him. But it would just be cool to find out what the OG one was.
it's Ronald.
Which, speaking of Frida, and this is, I feel like it's kind of a natural segue, but I kind of forgot what we were even originally talking about. So feel free to get me back on course. But um, the far ranging integrated defense automaton, or something like that, I think is what it was, which implies like a like a combat.
Yeah, I was thinking like a sniper or
Yeah,
something, but he said he didn't get his blunderbuss till he came to Uthodurn.
right. So I thought that was interesting. Um, but then also their whole conversation about what they thought their purpose was with like recording laughter and feeling like they were, I don't really know what line to draw from that, but like kind of therapeutic, I guess, sort of. Which made me wonder, like that kind of is at odds with the sniper bot of the acronym. So I'm wondering, is this potentially a same situation as FCG, where like this laughter thing was the front?
The cover, yeah, right.
Um,
I
but then I don't know, because far ranging again doesn't like, I don't know. It seems like then you wouldn't be like in an old person's home pretending to be a therapy bot and then stab them. You'd be like 3 rooftops away, and you would just snipe them without needing to
I can see it working
go
in the sense of
undercover.
like, like the military people who have like the little handheld like satellite thing as they're like listening, 2 blocks over.
Yeah, okay.
I could
A
see something
spy.
like that where, his cover is like, I record laughter, I listen to like parties and things, but really they're collecting, it's
Mm,
reconnaissance, like they're
yeah.
collecting secrets or things like that. And I do think the disconnect is that it does seem like these Aomatons aren't fully cognizant of their true built purpose.
Mhm.
Um, and are sort of discovering it as they're unraveling their history. I think of F.C.G's dream after Adahan, um, seeing the woman and the man, and they're kind of discovering, and that's probably a little bit specific to F.C.G, but it does seem like there is sort of like this, not brainwashing, but it's obfuscated. So I get it, like why it feels in tension.
Yeah. But so I mean, I guess depending on how much more time we're going to spend with this group, maybe we find out more. But it seems like something that we may just that's the information we're going to be left with as far as deciphering Frida's history. But maybe not. Maybe
Yeah.
we get more, especially if speaking of the Uthodurn plot points we were just potentially talking about, another one could be if freaking this robot might be turning into a werewolf and what that like do they try to stop it? In
I don't
which
know
case
how I
that's like
didn't
a
like
main
put this
thing.
together. Like, like I just didn't even like. I was just gonna like, oh yeah, cool, a con save. Like, I didn't even really think about it. And I think Abria like made a joke about like, now we get one of our own or something. And I was like, what does that mean? I don't know. She said something. I can't remember what it was, but
Yeah.
anyway, yeah, I didn't even think this could work on robots.
Yeah. I
But
guess it potentially can't. I mean, maybe it can't. Like maybe he failed the con save, but like the lycanthropy can't ultimately do anything. But I kind of hope it can. Like I want to see what that means, what that looks like.
yeah,
It seems like it would be pretty awesome.
becomes a
Um,
transformer, Beast
yeah,
Wars.
Beast Wars. Yeah. So again, I don't know if even if that is the case, would they just embrace it? I doubt it. I feel like that probably becomes a quest, if you will, to like we got to get to Uthodurn and see if somebody can help with this. I mean, on a meta level, I think Christian would be like, "That's awesome! Like, I want to be the robot Aormaton wolf." But character wise, I don't know. It seems like maybe it would make more sense if they were not cool with that.
Doesn't feel like there's any time for it.
Right? Yeah.
The only like tie-in I could see there being time for is Gurge's threat of if you bite someone, like we'll come for you, like we'll hunt you down.
Mm, that's
Um,
true.
which is, I doubt there's like a spidey sense of like Chetney just bit someone,
Yeah.
but it's the only way I could really see it tying in, or if this character comes up like in a one shot in like a separate story. Because we've talked a lot about how with the Apogee Solstice, it's ripe with opportunity for other one shots and things happening in other places of Exandria.
Mm,
Um, so yeah, I don't know how they're gonna handle it, but I guess we'll see this next Thursday.
yeah. And it might be something that if you can't deal with it right then, there's nothing you can do anyway. So because it was night still, right? It was still that night.
Mm-hmm.
They haven't slept. So either if they do have to do something about it, it's going to be we have to travel through the night with exhaustion,
Yeah,
or they're going to have to sleep on it, which seems like then that too much time would have passed.
we're gonna have to chop the arm off, Walking Dead style. So yeah, yeah, okay. Can we talk about Deanna
Yeah,
and her story?
yeah.
I thought Abria just did such a great job. I mean, the more I see from Abria and also from she's amazing in Worlds Beyond as
Hmm.
well. Um, but loved sort of her not just like story of her past, but just she had some lines that you were just like, wow, that was so well delivered.
Yeah,
Like the snowflake landing on water and
yeah.
just, sort of embracing becoming part of the whole. and also her description of like what happens when you die, I guess. And you could really feel the pain of her being gone and then having to come back. It was very, this is such a random reference. If you know this reference, let me know in the comments. When Buffy the Vampire dies,
Spoiler.
and when Buffy dies, so she dies in like, I don't remember what season it was. Well, they bring her back, and there's a real like palpable, pain point there of I was at peace, like I was resting, like I had moved on, and now I'm back. And it was this nice little tension of like the party members are so thrilled and excited that like Buffy's back, like she's our hero, but then Buffy herself is disappointed because it was like I said, I was finally at peace. And I could really kind of see that with Abria's character too, of like, I had moved on. I was there for however long. We don't have time works. And then I came back, and also how sad that her husband who went to this quest to bring her back moved on.
Yeah. Everything's kind of moved on. She said like her family's all grown and have their own families now. She's kind of
That's
like
tragic.
she's kind of like Captain America, like plucked out of time and
I
now
was
in
gonna
the
say Rip Van Winkle, but yours is a much cooler.
But it's interesting. I want to talk more about Deanna, but just real quick, the through line between Deanna and Frida kind of having that exact same experience.
Oh
Because
yeah.
Frida mentioned, like, when I was deactivated, wherever I was, I don't really know, but there was an absence of sadness. Like it was just whatever. And then I was brought back against my will. And now, which I think that kind of informs their position on the gods as well. Because Frida was kind of very like, let's let them sleep and they just use us as their batteries type of thing. So it's cool that both he and Deanna kind of have that brought back against their will and kind of, feel a certain type of way about it. Um, but yeah, Deanna's whole saga is very interesting. And I know we've talked about this before, but how old is Chetney? Like, do we know? Like, do
Old
we
as
actually
balls,
know and
or
I just
what do they
forgot? Or like, is
typically
it one of
say?
those things where he just is being weird and we don't really know?
I think it's both. I think they've tried to like quantify it. It's hundreds of years. I think isn't it like 500 years or 600 years or something? Or
I like a long time ago I'm talking about, like at the
how
beginning of the
old?
campaign. I thought it was like 200 and something. But then yeah, definitely since then, like he's dropped things that imply he's like hundreds and hundreds of years old.
Yeah, okay. I'm just
And I didn't Google, so this probably is a very easily answerable question.
Critical Role wiki probably over 400 years old.
Okay. So it seems like we don't know for certain, but given the things
Yeah.
he says, yeah, he's got to be up there.
Yeah.
Um
Hmm.
But so she and Chetney had something like 200 years ago, she said,
Yeah.
in the 600s. Then he just disappears one day, which I don't know. I wonder if that's okay. Sorry, I'm kind of piecing this together as I go here. She goes to Uthodurn after they break up, implying because she wanted to see where he was from, implying that they were never there together. Right? Is that fair?
Right. Right.
So, and we know the Ultgar stuff is in Uthodurn,
Right.
at least
And
now.
she's not aware that he's also an Uthodurn. Well,
Well, yeah, that
she
was
knows
one thing I wanted to bring up. Yeah,
he's from Uthodurn. That's why she goes back to Uthodurn, because she wants to kind of
right.
like embrace nostalgia, but doesn't know Chetney is also there. Chetney has his run in and leaves while she sort of like sets up shop, I guess.
Now, when you say his run-in, do you just mean whatever it is
Yeah,
that was
Ultgar,
going on?
whatever pushes him out of Uthodurn ultimately.
So, Chetney, regardless of how old he is from Uthodurn, which I guess there's 2 points here. We know that he has got this backstory with Ultgar and Uthodurn, which takes place somewhat recently in his long history for Deanna to have been there at the same time. But then he's also from Uthodurn.
Yeah.
At least he says. So
Right.
anyway, so he's from there. He leaves at some point and has this history with Deanna. We don't know where, I guess, right?
Right.
And
Well,
then they break up.
presumably near or in there, because otherwise she wouldn't think to go back to Uthodurn in like a nostalgic way.
Well, unless they just talked about it and he was like, "That's where I'm from."
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Um, but so then they split up. She dies, and he does whatever. At some point, he goes back, has this Ultgar stuff, which maybe he had the Ultgar stuff the whole time. I guess we don't know necessarily. We don't know like when the Ultgar stuff started. She's resurrected at some point, goes to Uthodurn. They're both there for a time. Chetney leaves, and the events of Campaign 3 happen.
Mhm.
Some point she runs into Frida, and then they're just chilling, I guess, while they both try to find a purpose in life.
Seems fair. Yeah.
Okay.
Sounds about right.
Just wanted to make sure I had the timeline right. But yeah, her story is so tragic. So I guess at some point post her and Chetney splitting up, she meets. Okay, wait. Here's where I'm getting confused again because she meets her husband at some point.
So, okay, so let me see if this pieces it together. And just for simplicity, without getting like way too complicated, I'm just gonna make some assumptions.
Okay.
Chetney and her get together in Uthodurn and they have a fling. They break up. She then meets her husband, bounces back, what have you, falls in love, gets married, and eventually dies. Um, 200 years go by. Chetney's up to whatever hijinks he's up to, and whatever other, I think he named a few women or something, and other, maybe it was just
Mm-hmm.
Deanna. I can't remember. That was funny to call back to. But all this to say, Deanna's brought back to life. Her husband, everyone moves on or has moved on. She returns to Uthodurn and eventually finds Frida. Meanwhile, Chetney, being in Uthodurn, has his issues with Ultgar and the Glass Blades and eventually leaves, and the events of Campaign 3 begin. And now here they have reconnected.
The only and I don't we don't need to waste too much more time on this, but the only thing I'm confused about is that she goes to Uthodurn because of the Chetney connection, right? She's like, I
Yeah.
wanted to go, but then
Yeah.
isn't that where she dies? Because doesn't she
Well,
say like
I
I
mean,
went there and there was a festival and I got killed or whatever?
no, I
No.
don't think so.
Okay,
I think
maybe that's why I'm confused then.
no, I think the implication was like Dustle, her wife, and her family had all their lives continued on, and she was looking for something to latch onto in terms of like connection and like purpose. So she came back to a time she was truly happy, back to Uthodurn,
That makes
and
sense to me.
was like, this can be home.
Yeah. Okay,
So
that all makes perfect sense to me. I'm probably just mistaken. I just thought that I thought her being drawn to Uthodurn was then where she died, but maybe it was just
it's like 20 minutes later. All right, so then was it? And when did Esteros get there? I'm like, wait, what?
um
Yeah, okay.
but yeah, I'm wondering probably not, but I'm wondering if how she died has any type of interesting
Yeah,
connection
like
to anything.
meaningfulness.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it's
Um
interesting.
cuz it would even just make Chetney feel that much worse about it, you know. And if they did have any type of like real connection, which it seems like at least on her end they did. She's still, you know, feeling types of ways about it at this point. Like did he even ghost her for like any type of noble reason, let's call it, maybe because of what was going on with Ultgar and he wanted to like protect her. You know, I don't know if I'm giving Chetney too much credit, but I could see something like that, and then
I
maybe in
Yeah,
that case somehow that monster ties into it as well. Not that it like
yeah.
is Chetney or anything. I don't think he would have been a
I think
werewolf then, but
for me personally, I just prefer the Chetney's just an a-hole arc of like when you go the angle of like he was ultimately protecting her. Now you start to kind of get into like clicheism territory of like,
right.
I only hurt you to protect you, and which I'm not against. I don't have an issue with it. It's okay if they go that route, but I'm just saying I'm comfortable if it turns out like Chetney's like, yeah, I was just a douchebag.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I'm I'm with you there because if it really feels like Apriya was just being a menace by creating this character to be Deanna.
I
Um,
just loved them all scrambling through their notes
yeah.
and like just, and I think at the end, I think Travis was like, Matt, how could you do this to me? It was just it was just great. So
And Abria's working her way through the cast. We had Sam in Calamity. Now Travis
yeah,
here. It was a
It-
fun little Calamity reunion on the top
yeah.
half of
And
the screen.
she even mentioned Laren too, which I mean, I love Calamity, so I stand any kind of reference as small as it may be.
Um,
So
but so I honestly agree with you that I doubt that there's like the full I was protecting you, Deanna. But to push back a little bit on I do think Chetney is an asshole, but I think there is a reason for that. Which that's not to say that it justifies what he does, but I think there's more to him in that way than, just being the cranky old man. Which I'm assuming probably has something to do with the Olgar stuff. Um,
well, I know you do have a penchant for bad people and wanting to,
is this a
defend them.
David
So
reference?
it is a David reference.
Calm down.
David's a
Calm down.
childhood friend who became a serial killer. That will. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just saying it could be Chetney's just a douchebag, which you're gonna have to come to terms with. If that's the
Listen,
case.
all I'm saying is both things can be true. Like he can be a douchebag, but there can be an interesting,
Yeah, a warm, gooey,
a
chocolatey
reason for
center.
that.
Yeah, yeah, okay. What do you think's going on with Old? I mean, we're gonna find out, but there's kind of three separate things in my mind. Ultgar, the glass blades,
Wait,
and
remind me who the glass blades are?
the people who chased him out of town after he
Oh, right,
stabbed.
right, right,
He
right.
said, "I stabbed the dude in the leg or in the knee."
Was he talking about Olgar?
No, he talks about them separately. He talks about Ulgar and the guy I stabbed in the kneecap.
Okay.
I think I'm like 90% sure that's the case, but I think the guy is associated with the glass blades.
Mm-hmm.
And then third, the Savalier Woods. Isn't that where there's like the corruption or whatever that we talked about?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, your theory from several episodes ago, in my mind, is like coming together, right? I mean, I don't know if that was buzzing in your brain at all as you mentioned the Savalier Woods.
Yeah. I mean, they're so close to them. I feel like that's another thing that they could maybe touch on. But again, is there time and space for it? Like maybe they have to. I don't know. Maybe there is no one that can just teleport them yet, and so maybe they do decide to go there to investigate if they can connect the threads for their characters. If they have without metagaming, if they can
Yeah.
determine there's a reason to check that. Is that where he got bit, or do we know?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't know, actually.
But to cycle
question.
back to what you were saying, I don't know what's going on with Olgar and how all these different factions tie in with the Glass Blades. If they're like like maybe were they hired by Olgar to deal with Chetney if stuff
Yeah.
started hitting the fan between them. And I don't think it's really worth reading too much into it, but again, Chetney was based on Chutney, this character from a one-shot Travis played that was one of Santa's elves. So here we have them in the North Pole, if you will, the northern snowy continent, and there's this person he hates. Like, is it all going to be not the same thing, obviously, but is it all going to be loosely kind of based on that still? Like, is Olgar like an evil Santa type figure or something? Like, I don't know.
Or is Chetney we take back this story, he was angry that they were trying to get away from wood. Is Ultgar just this benevolent toy maker and wants to expand their offerings? And Chetney was the,
Yeah.
an obnoxious employee who just wouldn't get with the program. I don't know.
Yeah.
I think that'd be interesting if Chetney was just like, oh, Chetney, really, dude? I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
So,
No, I'd love to hear y'all's thoughts in the comments on what you
yeah.
what you think's going on there. But yeah, I guess to get us back down to brass tacks here, because I don't think I've given you a chance to say what you think's going to happen there yet. But what do you like? I guess it's hard to say because we don't know how many episodes we're going to get with this crew. But like, for your money, what do you think's happening in Uthodurn, and where do you think we're going?
It's weird because kind of like you said, there's so much like open space. I personally would feel really uncomfortable with indulging too deeply into these potential story threads
Mm-hmm.
because for me, it just feels like a distraction of what has been the focus, which has been the apogee solstice. And I think every episode farther we go, the less punchy the apogee solstice feels. Meaning, like, when we knew it was the day of the apogee solstice, like that episode that built that they were counting down was a really big, like tense setup episode. And then the actual episode 51 was massive. If it turns out that we're 20 episodes later and we're like on day 23 of the apogee solstice, for me, it really loses momentum very quickly. And so I don't think they'll go that route. I'm just saying I see so much open area to like pull on threads, and yet I feel like there has to be some intentional tabling. Like that has
Yeah.
to get dealt with later. Maybe we revisit it. Maybe they have a very brief run in Uthodurn and they wrap up the episode somehow getting back to Marquette. And then later, 20 episodes from now, as they're trying to figure out how to defeat Ludinus or what have you, hey, that guy we met in Uthodurn talked about the Savalier Woods. Let's go back there. And then they return, and it makes sense.
Yeah.
I just have a really hard time seeing them go too deeply in this.
Yeah. We haven't even really talked about the apogee solstice yet, but yeah, like that's going to be a really interesting uh line to tread of like we have this massive thing still happening that like has to be dealt with, but like what about these really interesting things that are right in front of you? And obviously Matt has a vision and has this, plotted out, and not saying it's scripted or railroaded, but you guys know what I mean. Like he obviously has an idea of how this is going to come together. Um, but yeah, we we did realize that Imogen has teleportation circle now, right? Didn't we figure that out when she leveled, or no?
We found out, I think that it was an option,
It's an
not necessarily
option.
that she took it.
I'm sure she would though. But there's obviously this whole static thing, which we haven't even really
Yeah.
talked about. I mentioned it briefly earlier in the fact that one, I think it makes sense and it's a cool piece of the solstice, like world building, if you will. But two, I just absolutely love it that they're split up with no way to communicate, because that kind of sucks some of the air out of the room if they were just immediately, you okay? Yeah, we're okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's, you guys go
Yeah.
here, we'll meet up here. Like this is much more interesting to me that they're
Yeah.
actually,
Hmm.
separated from each other. And the point I'm getting at is, would teleportation even work? We do know some, like they're able to fly, they're able to cast lightning bolts, like some spells work, but
Hmm.
those are all like, how do I describe this? Those are all like self-contained in the sense
Yeah.
that they're just,
Localized.
yeah, localized. That's the word I was looking for.
Yeah.
Maybe like, sending magic that travels, teleportation magic, obviously. Maybe those types of things would be affected. Um, so all that to say is that even if she does have it, that might not be a solution. Um, but yeah, I think it's cool that the way the ley lines are messing with things.
Yeah. Which, speaking of the dream that they have, it feels like things are still very much in progress. Matt describes sort of like the divine lattice sort of unthreading. I think I interpreted that correctly. Did
Yeah,
you have the
it's like
same?
it's making like a hole. Yeah,
Yeah. And Ray Laura are arriving on Marquette,
yeah.
which, what does that mean?
I don't know. I had a couple of thoughts on this. I'm gonna kind of loop Imogen into this. And we know her scars are going crazy.
Yeah.
One random thought, is she turning into one? Like, is she
Oh,
turning
interesting.
into a Ray Laura? So there's that. Is, and something we've talked about in previous episodes with Ruidus Borns and with Ruidus, and the conversation we've had about, is it two sides of the same coin with the Luxon and Beacons and Consecution?
Yeah.
Could these Ray Laura be like for lack of a better term, consecuted souls, and are Ruidusborn's like their potential vessels. So I was wondering
Right.
if all those Raylora we see, couple options. One, were those previously Ruidusborns that were there for the event and have now either transformed into Raylora or have been taken over by Raylora now that there's this hole in the gate. Like, so maybe there's a way for them to exit. Or is it purely just Raylora from Ruidus have come down because of the hole? Um, I'm not really leaning one way or the other, but I think both would be really interesting.
I think it's interesting that she sees the Ray Laura, but not the Paragon's Call or Ruby Vanguard. And it does make me wonder. I like what you said about potentially could it be Ruidusborn turning into Ray Laura? Because we know in episode 51 that this sort of red energy began to emanate off of them.
Oh.
And maybe Liliana, like I said, I'm team she ported them away. Like maybe like since they hadn't chosen this for themselves or as an act of mercy to her daughter. I don't know.
Yeah.
But definitely it feels like that's as much as we're going to get for now until we return at least to Orum's group, which I think their focus is going to be much more on like what the heck's happening in Marquette and how do we get there.
Yeah. Yeah. I so do you think there's any chance that, well, I guess it just depends what we're talking about. Turning into Raylora, do you think that means that like there's this is kind of weird, but are they still themselves and they're just turning into Raylora? Or do you think there's any chance that Raylora are like
Oh, like body
taking over
snatchers?
their
Yeah.
bodies? Yeah, like they have
Yeah.
freed themselves from Ruidus and now they have these Ruidus-born puppets that they can inhabit.
Yeah. I think both would be interesting. Yeah, I don't know. That's yeah. It's honestly it just makes me even more. It furthers my previous point on I don't want to spend so long in Uthodurn. Like
Mm-hmm.
I like how it's set up currently. I think it's interesting that they're split up, but there's going to be a point where I'm going to lose interest with every additional story episode in one of these arcs. And I think it's going to be around probably episode 3 or 4 where I'm going to get hangry for what's happening with Orem and then where's this heading towards?
Yeah.
Um
I can't see them having 4 straight episodes, like a whole over a month because of the off week without going to the other group. I'm not saying that couldn't happen, but I would be very surprised. I would guess 2, 3 max.
I can see
Um,
them resolving it in 3 because think about the Briarwood getting Laudna back. I think that was 3 episodes.
I don't remember, but yeah.
Like going to Whitestone, that whole interaction, going to the Upside Down, and freeing Laudna. I think that was about 3
Oh, okay.
episodes.
I thought you were talking about campaign 1. So okay, yeah. I'm with you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. But so yeah, I'm with you, and I think I couldn't imagine that was Matt's idea to like have this moment and then have 12 episodes that were like
Yeah.
side quests. So we'll see. But I feel like we got to see the other group within like the next 2 weeks, hopefully. Which let me take one. I want to you go where you need to go. I'm about to shift, but I want to check my notes really quick before I do that. So
No,
if you
I'm
have
good.
anything else with what we're
No,
talking
no,
about,
no, I'm good.
uh, okay, 2 quick things. One on this point in particular, which you mentioned in the recap, was just Imogen feeling like Matt described what she felt like when during the
Yeah.
dream and when this was happening of being like you were connected to something you've been missing your whole life, and
Yeah.
it felt good. That's really interesting to me, and it not that there was a deliberate connection here, but it reminded
Very
me of what Abria
unsettling.
said about like being the snowflake
Yeah.
that melts into the ocean and kind of like So again, not that that was deliberate at all, but I'm wondering if there is like a death connotation there of like just releasing and letting go and like being one with Ruidus or Predathos or whatever that may mean, or if it's just like because she's Ruidus born, because she's been part of some greater machinations in some way
Yeah.
or another, like this is her purpose in a way, and so in that way
Yeah.
it feels good to kind of return to that. But did you
Well,
have any?
this isn't the first time this has come up. I mean, if you remember, Otahan's whole encounter with them was telling her to embrace and let go.
Yeah.
And we kind of saw that in the micro as like, yeah, become part of the team, kill your friends. But I don't know. Going back to Lily, if Liliana did port them away, if releasing Predathos means giving up yourself into part of the whole, the ocean, whatever that means,
Hmm.
I could see her mom, hey, I want that to be a choice you make and not something you're forced to do because everyone else came here willingly,
Hmm.
assumably. Um, but yeah, we keep getting this theme of her connection to this sense of peace and wholeness, and I I think there's going to be a choice she will have to consciously make. Maybe not in the near future, but I would say in the semi near future. And I think it could be pretty interesting. I think it's outside of like above the table. Not that Laura would necessarily want this, but it wouldn't be the first time that a player has been open to a new character, even and been open to the end of their first character. I mean, I have a player in my campaign who really has loved their character, and then we did this little mini campaign, and he was like, "Hey, I think I like that character more for how much I loved this first character, which we played for over a year."
Hmm.
Um, and I said, like any good DM, well, too bad. That's the character that you wrote. No, I'm just kidding. So, I mean, not that I'm not even implying that she doesn't like Imogen or anything like that. I'm just saying I like piece this also together with Orm's advice to Fern. Like, hey, we need to keep our eyes open about Imogen.
Yeah.
I could just see an end to Imogen's story as we know it. Um, I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. I mean, especially if two of any of the things we said earlier were true about like is she turning into a Red Laura or could one possess her? With obviously there's going to be agency in that decision. Matt just wouldn't like remove her
Yeah.
character from the board, so I'm not saying anything like that would happen. But at least these possibilities are out there, and stranger things have happened. So yeah, I don't know. I'm very interested to see. There's been a lot of conversation about like the way it was before and the peace. Like Liliana described it that way back a couple episodes ago, which back then I even remarked that that kind of sounds like death. Which I don't think they're going into it with like this suicidal ideology necessarily, but I wonder if it all is like an that they don't know that, but it's kind of like an allegory or not allegory,
Yeah.
whatever. Like maybe again, I'm tying too many threads together here, but if they do get taken over by Relora, they maybe die, but they are part of this new
Hmm.
thing. Um, One other thing I want to touch
Well,
on
I'm
this.
sorry.
Yeah, go
One
ahead.
last detail on that. If that is the route that it goes, it does open up opportunity for a nice, beautiful tie-in of Laudna's comments to Imogen on how like we transcend reality, like our souls are tethered. Um, I think it would be really interesting if Imogen did let go and her physical form is lost in some way, whether that's death or something else. And by the end of the campaign, there's a nice, I don't know what it would look like, but that soul tie realized. I don't know. I think that would be really beautiful.
Yeah,
But
that would be, or even like again, I'm not saying this is the case, but if it is the case where you transform into a Raylora, maybe Imogen does, but like Laudna can bring her back because of that like deep
yeah,
connection or something. Yeah,
yeah,
there's some cool
yeah. I love
potential
that.
there for sure.
Whew. I love
Um,
it.
One thing I just kind of wanted to briefly touch on is we kind of have this whole relationship, not relationship, but like there's this question, right? Of like, do we need the gods or should we get rid of them type of thing that's
Yeah.
going on. I wish there was a character in the main story that was really fighting for the gods, because we really don't have one. And we just got two new guests this episode that were both like against it, even though they're both like Dawnfather clerics. Um,
Yeah, we don't have like a Pike type
yeah,
character.
which I'm not saying like I'm on that team and I really wish it had some representation. I just feel like there's good meat
Yeah.
to dig in there too if there was somebody on that. Like Orem obviously is like they killed my family, and that's a great point, but he doesn't really himself feel that strongly about the gods. Particularly, it's because of his personal ties to the people that died. Um,
It's a fantastic point. I think you're spot on that it's absent tension that would be really valuable for the table, I think. And I think you make a great point on Orem being like Orem has been that person, but it's not because of his devotion to the gods, but
right.
because oh, my whole family's dead. Maybe FCG could become like in an odd way.
That's
FCG
true.
seems to be the most religious person.
Yeah.
You know, as he puts it, he worships the one true God. um, so, but it's been I don't know. It's been kind of of a gag a little bit. But yeah, you make a great point. There's an absence of that tension because there's an absence of that person being like, no, like the gods are good. Um, so which I think also in terms of like entertainment, I think it sort of pulls away from the punchiness of the Apogee Solstice because we don't have that person reminding us as the viewer of the value of the gods.
Mhm.
Um, you know, in terms of not even like I could see like a Vax type character, you know, sort of defending the Matron of Ravens and like how, you know, ferrying souls is so precious and so valuable. So we as the viewer are just kind of getting like, yeah, the gods suck. Like this is a good thing.
Yeah.
Which again, I think it sort of detracts a little bit. So
Yeah. And you know, to be clear, there have been in past campaigns very religious, characters that are very connected to gods. And I guess we could still see them, or at least someone that has that ideology, but it seems like we could have had some interesting moments before this point if that was the case. But I don't think that conversation's over, so it's still possible that. And again, maybe it is FCG. Maybe there is a boiling point where like a decision kind of needs to be made, and maybe there's some moments there. Um, oh, I just lost my train of thought. Let me look at my notes really quick. See if this can come back to me. Nope. Hopefully it comes back to me soon. But I I had something and it just completely left me. Um, Fun fact: Nick Jonas is canon, I guess, because of FCG's spiritual weapon.
yeah,
It'd
yeah.
be funny if Matt was like, "All right, Nick, join the table." Uh,
He's a major Critical Role fan. Yeah. Well, is there
um,
anything else you want to talk about?
there's one. I'm hoping, kind of, I remember the one thing I wanted to just say, but there's one thing that we don't have to spend too much time on, but even though we don't think we're getting the other group necessarily tomorrow, it would be kind of fun to briefly speculate, which we already kind of did a little bit, on who might join them. Now, we talked about the Crown Keepers, basically. Um, but do you have any other guesses? And I mean, if it's not them, then it's probably people brand new that we couldn't possibly guess, but just didn't know if you had any thoughts
It's not
on
going to
that.
be. I don't think it's going to be anyone from a past campaign. Which I say that because I think there's opportunity there. Them having met the Mighty Nine and having engaged with Vox Machina, I think it'd be too weird to have like a level 20 or what have you. Like, yeah, let's team up. It would just be odd.
Yeah.
So, not Dorian. I think it's a totally new character. Um, but maybe a fan favorite guest star.
I wonder, because the other group is Ashton, Orem, Laudna, and we still don't know for sure where they are, but like I talked about in our last episode, they could be in this place near the near Terra, which is the Earth Ashari place, which doesn't really have a direct tie to Ashton, but it could, given his quasi ties to Ashari people through the Hishari. So I wonder if we could maybe get any guests that relate to Ashton, which leads me
Mm.
to, could we see somebody come in and play a member of the Nobodies?
Oh,
Because I don't remember if they actually ever did it, but back when they were making their plans, like 10 days till the solstice, and they were calling everybody, didn't he at least said
yeah.
that he wanted to reach out to them, but I don't know if they ever did. Do you
Yeah,
remember if they
they
did?
did. Yeah, I
Okay.
think they did, and I think the person was like, "Well, we're all over the place," or something like that. Um, so yeah, that'd be
Maybe
interesting for
maybe
sure.
we see one of them. But yeah, that's pretty much it. And I'm kicking myself because I still can't remember. I felt like I had something good to say 5 minutes ago, but it's
It's very
gone.
George Costanza. You'll be driving later today, and you'll be like, "That's what I should have said."
Yeah.
Okay. Well, guys, let us know what you guys thought about this episode, your thoughts, theories, and what the heck's going to happen. And we'll be watching this Thursday, back next week
I
during the week
remembered.
off. Oh,
I'm
okay.
sorry.
Go
I
ahead.
remembered. It's not that much, but it's just a quick. Speaking of like the whole gods versus the not gods thing, we had Frida bring up their theory about how we're just batteries for the gods, and I just thought that was interesting because that's like the third or fourth time we've had somebody express that. I think Ludinus said that,
Yeah.
or at least the research books that he found in Aor mentioned it, and then Xerxes said some real cryptic stuff like this during Calamity, being like, we're not your
Yeah.
children. Like, we created you, not the other way
Yes.
around.
That's right.
And so I'm not saying that, like, ship it, this is true, but it's just interesting that that point keeps coming back up. So I wonder if there is
I
any truth to this, that if not like humans created the gods, there's definitely, it's not like a one-way street. Like, both maybe need each other.
I think there's substance there because I know Matt has done a lot of work with Blizzard and speaking about WoW specifically, like one of the story points in retail right now is that like for 10 plus years it's been the Titans created the world and all this stuff, but in retail currently it's been like, oh, that hasn't been totally true. They aren't actually like the benevolent creators that's been told to you. So I could see that story thread happening of the gods didn't necessarily come here and forge and create and anyway. So
Yeah. I I just, there's definitely some juiciness there that could be dove into. But yeah, I just wanted to bring that up because it reminded me of
yeah,
all the times we've been getting that little seed.
yeah.
But yeah, sorry for cutting you off.
Well, let us know what you guys think, and we'll be back. Will thumbnail
Thumbnail. I
maybe
don't know if
like
it would, or you have an idea?
I was gonna say like Wolf Chetney and Frida or something was
Oh,
kind of
okay. Yeah. What I was gonna say was like the slap, but I don't know if we could really translate that through a thumbnail or not.
why is he looking away?
Well,
It
because
looks
he
like I'm
got he
looking out
got
the window.
slapped. Like.
Yeah, yeah. I think we could do whatever, and people would probably think it's one of those two scenarios. Someone's getting slapped or someone's getting bit by a wolf.
Okay.
Because I was thinking one person could be like, come here, doggy, and then the person's like, wolf form or something.
Okay, that works.
Okay, who do you want to be?
Yeah, you choose your idea.
I'll be Frida.
Okay, so I'll just be menacing wolf.
Yeah, yeah. All right, you guys.
Beautiful.
Well, we appreciate you guys listening. Thanks for supporting us, and we'll be back with more content coming up.
Bye, y'all.